Welcome to another ERS Pre-Frontier report. This time we look at Myanmar. Today I'm joined by Dan Wright and Tim Curtis. Dan is the Security Director at ERS and Tim is the Director for International Operations. Both Dan and Tim have recently spent significant time supporting clients in Myanmar. Thanks for joining me today, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us, Emily.
Myanmar has been steeped in controversy over the past few years due to the marginalizations of minorities, suppression of pro-democracy leaders, and internal insecurity. What's your view from the inside, Tim?
Yeah, it's an interesting perception from far, Annalyn, and while a lot of the openly reported events are correct, there is still a very strong counterbalance that's been underreported. There's an active economy, including oil and gas concessions that have been contracted to international companies, and many of these are in production. There's also a rapidly growing small to medium enterprise sector, and as we know, small to medium enterprises really are the cornerstone for economic progress. Additionally, I think the thing to remember is Myanmar is not really a developing country, it's a redeveloping country. Indeed, its infrastructure was once exceptional, arguably better than Singapore's, and the architecture of that is still there. And I think also importantly, elderly people still remember those days, and Dan and I experienced a real feel of optimism on the streets.
Thanks, Tim. And what about the security and wider safety situation, Dan?
That's an interesting question, Annalyn, because I think insecurity has been very overstated in recent times. Yes, there are certainly some questions surrounding the outcome of this year's elections, but much of the security landscape is dominated by intercommunal conflict, land disputes and criminal activity. Expats and foreign-owned businesses are actually rarely targeted, and in cases that they are, it's usually the government that was the primary target or a government agency. Yangon, in fact, is a very safe, very pleasant city, but there is a degree of insecurity in Kachin and Rakhine states. This is due to conflict with the army in the case of Kachin and conflict with the Rohingya minority group in Rakhine. I think by far the biggest risk affecting international companies is the lack of infrastructure, both civil and in emergency service architecture. Road traffic accidents are common and commonly fatal, whilst medical response is uncoordinated and confined to the capital cities. I would advise travellers to carefully consider their journey plan and establish both robust and tested contingencies.
Do you think there is a chance that the security situation could worsen?
It's a country with many dividing factors, ranging from ethnic minorities and marginalised communities competing for resources, through to religious conflict. So yes, there is a chance that the security situation could worsen, but I would say it's a small chance. The overwhelming sense throughout the country is one of optimism and in receiving foreign investment positively, albeit with a bit of intelligent conservatism. I believe that the biggest impact that I think we'll see is that as foreign investment increases, so will the disputes arising from profit-sharing agreements and rights to land. This will in turn precipitate an increase in organised criminal activity, specialising in petty crime and the trafficking of illegal commodities, but potentially also resulting in an increased kidnapping threat. Having said all of that, most of the disputes will be aimed at the government and the army, and I think the current program of democratic reform will go a long way in mitigating these risks.
Thank you, Dan. Tim, what do you think are the challenges for companies looking to expand into Myanmar?
Well, look, I think despite recent positive steps, Myanmar's reforms are still quite embryonic, and it's very much a transitional market. It's been suffering from decades of underinvestment, principally as we've seen in education, healthcare and infrastructure sectors. Its financial institutions are underdeveloped, and really the government agencies tasked with drafting and implementing the reforms are underfunded and lack both competency and capacity. By way of example, for some of the year there's no reliable electricity supply and none at all to about 70% of the population. And another major challenge for international businesses is the skilled labour shortage. So I guess Myanmar does pose a challenging operating environment for foreign companies and investors, but really no more so than countries in Africa. We see some low-level operational challenges like land ownership, acquisition of land, labour rights, grievance mechanisms, stakeholder engagement, And of course, there is some anti-corruption measures that need to be implemented. But recently we've seen US Deputy National Security Advisor claiming that there is progress in Myanmar, and ongoing progress will be dependent on three things. One is the democratic election in December this year. The second being a national ceasefire across ethnic insurgencies, and we met with the Peacekeeping Centre and that's imminent. And the third is better inclusion of the country's minority groups, which links with the second. So two of the three are certain in the near future. And I think the other X factor is the impending release of a mining law, which should open tenements and concessions to international mining companies. And that also is not too far away.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, gentlemen. Then where can interested people get more information?
I would encourage people to visit the contact page of our website, executiverisksolutions.com.au, or they can email us at info@executiverisksolutions.com.au.
Thank you.